You can still see the point there where the Kansas and the Missouri meet. So a lot of times that'll flood over. There's a statue of Lewis and Clark right there. But last time I drove by there, I go to Fairfax, and I could see it plainly. So the river is up, but it's not like out of the banks or anything.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. I keep waiting. We'll just get later and later. So, last week we talked about meditation, and we talked about things to do to prepare for meditation, and some of the Buddha's teachings on meditation, the shamatha and the vipassana and such, basic meditation. And tonight I wanted to follow that up. I was wanting to talk about the Jhana States, which are classic kind of advanced meditation states. But they're interesting because they really fill in the Buddhist theory of meditation, if you will, and also the Shakyamuni Buddha and the early Buddhist view of what the path was. And it kind of ties together the whole notion of discipline and restraint and meditation, and how, in a way, you kind of move from insight to deeper insight. And the Jhana States are written about all over the sutras because they're one of the basic important topics of early Buddhism. But I found a very interesting long description of all the Jhana States, and I wanted to read that one because it had some new kind of elements to it that were very interesting. Let me get my reading glasses for this just a second. So this is in the book of the Numerical Discourse of the Buddha. This is a very thick one here. And this is the Book of Nines. And this is Sutra 41 called Tapusa. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Mallas near the Malian town named Uruvalakapa. Then in the morning, the Blessed One dressed, took his bowl and robe, and entered Uruvalakapa for alms. When he had walked for alms, after his meal and returning from his alms round, he addressed the Venerable Ananda. You stay right here, Ananda, while I enter that great wood to pass the day. Yes, Bhante, the Venerable Ananda replied. Then the Blessed One entered the great wood and sat down to pass the day at the foot of a tree. I'm going to comment as we go along. Note that at the foot of a tree. This is why I just bought the woods. Because the early Buddha, he sits under trees. That's where they meditate, right? They put their little cushy grass under the tree. And now it's way past when he was enlightened and the famous Bodhi tree. But everywhere he goes, they go out in the morning, they get their food, and then they hit to the forest and sit under a tree all day. So there's something there that we need to think about. To continue. Then the householder, Tapusa, approached the Venerable Ananda, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and said to him, Bhante Ananda, we laymen enjoy sensual pleasures, delight in sensual pleasures, take delight in sensual pleasures, and rejoice in sensual pleasures. Renunciation seems like a precipice to us. I have heard that in this Dharma and discipline there are very young bhikshus whose minds launch out upon renunciation and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, seeing it as peaceful. Renunciation, Bhante, is the dividing line between the multitude and the bhikshus in this dharma and discipline. So the householder is coming to the Buddha and he's saying, well, yes, you guys are doing something remarkable here, but look at us. I mean, we just love sense pleasures. How do you get to this place where you're able to do this? So the Nanda is going to toss this question to the Buddha. So then the Venerable Ananda, together with the householder Tapusa, went to the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and say, Bhante, this householder Tapusa says, Bhante Ananda, we laymen enjoy sensual pleasures, and so forth and so on. And renunciation seems like a precipice to us. But there are very young bhikshus whose minds are liberated in it, seeing it as peaceful. What is this dividing line between the multitude and the bhikshus in this dharma and discipline? Is this it? So it is, Ananda, so it is. So the question is here, from the layman's point of view, renunciation seems like, utterly drastic. That you're going to renounce the world and you're going to renounce all sensual pleasures. And that's why he says like a precipice. It's like jumping off a cliff. How do you do this? And that's a big dividing line, and it looks like only a few people are going to be able to do this. So now the Buddha is going to explain how he himself made the move from a person whose life was full of sensual pleasures to the Buddha. And that's going to take us through the Jhana States, which is very interesting. So the Buddha replies, before my enlightenment, while I was just a bodhisattva, not fully, yet fully enlightened, it occurred to me too. Good is renunciation, good is solitude. Yet my mind did not launch out upon renunciation and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, though I did see it was peaceful. It occurred to me, why is it that my mind does not launch out upon renunciation and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, though I see it as peaceful? Then it occurred to me, I have not seen the danger in sensual pleasures, and have not cultivated that insight. I have not achieved the benefit in renunciation and have not pursued it. Therefore my mind does not launch out upon renunciation and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, although I see it as peaceful. So this is going to be the theme through the whole sequence we're going to run here. It's very interesting. He realizes at first that certain things would be desirable. Like, we think exercise would be desirable, but we don't actually do it, say. And what gets us to do it? Well, seeing the danger of being of the way we are. And it's going to take seeing that danger. And so seeing the danger of sensual pleasures has to be seen before there's a motive, before the will is there, before one is going to see renunciation as something one wants to do. And so here's your exam question I'm leading up to. A future exam question, but we'll ask it now. What is the danger in sensual pleasures? What do you think it is that the Buddha's going to see?
How about attachment?
Okay. Any other suggestions?
Leads to suffering.
Okay. How does it lead to suffering?
Attachment.
It's impermanent, so it'll be dissatisfactory.
Okay.
Yeah, it's come down.
Anything else?
So it's good for a moment, but he sees the entirety of its consequences all the way to the end. So while sensual pleasures are fine at the beginning, they deteriorate in their good qualities.
Okay, that's good. Anything else?
They're not profitable.
Not profitable.
Well, they're kind of profitable. They make you feel good, don't they? because of the look. Well, he should. Well, she should. It occurred to me as I'm reading this, I had to stop at that point and go, well, what is this danger? And then the danger, and this is a very subtle point and very important point. Sensual pleasures are not, in Buddhism, not problematic in themselves per se. It's not the pleasure part of it that's a problem. And the fact that it's everything is we're sensual. We're sensual beings. We eat, we sleep, we rub against each other, and everything. And the thing that the Buddha, given his view on life, that it's the grasping. It's very hard to be, as the layman said, delighting in sensual pleasures and not be involved in grasping. And so it's sort of, Diane got it with the idea of attachment. But it's that grasping. The grasping is, remember, that's where you're going to cut the nidanas. That whole circle of karma that begins with ignorance and leads to birth, suffering, old age, and death, that can only be cut by not engaging in grasping actions. And we may feel desire, we're going to have feelings, that's natural, we're going to have all this, but if we don't grasp, if we don't attach, if we're indifferent to sensual pleasures, then we're out of that danger. But the danger is that we're not indifferent. We actually form preferences. We like certain things, we don't like other things, and we end up chasing things. And it's the chasing things, the grasping things, the going after things, that's what's going to bind us and keep the karma wheel going. And that's what's going to keep us from progressing in meditation. So we have to, as the Buddha's going to head in this direction, we'll see, but this idea of indifference has to develop. I would say, so that if something pleasurable happens, that's fine, and if it doesn't, that's fine. If we have something enjoyable, that's fine. If things are not enjoyable, that's okay. That's the idea of equanimity that's going to come into play. So we'll let the Buddha tell the story. Then, Ananda, it occurred to me, if having seen the danger in sensual pleasures, I would cultivate that, and if having achieved the benefit in renunciation, I would pursue it, it is then possible that my mind would launch out upon renunciation and become placid, settled, and liberated in it. And since I see it as peaceful. And then he says, sometime later, the Buddha is never in a hurry, sometime later, having seen the danger in sensual pleasures, I did cultivate that insight. And having achieved the benefit in renunciation, I did pursue it. My mind then launched out upon renunciation and became placid, settled, and liberated in it, since I saw it was peaceful. So that's how he understands it. He understands that at some point that the problem, he understands what sensual pleasures are. He understands that the problem with them is the danger of attachment or grasping. And yet, he doesn't, and not until it actually, there's some point, this is very Dzogchen-like really, some point it happens that he becomes completely convinced that sensual pleasures, grasping at sensual pleasures is not going to work, and he drops it. And then his mind, and then he's able to renounce, and his mind then has these benefits of being peaceful and placid and liberated and settled. So continuing, sometime later Ananda, secluded from sensual pleasures, so he's pulled away from the sensual pleasures and the grasping, become indifferent to them, as I said. I entered and dwelled in the first jhana state. So just that pulling away from the pleasures, becoming different, that makes this big change. He now is able to enter into this first state of kind of of freedom or liberation, the first jhana state. While I was dwelling in this state, perception and attention, accompanied by sensuality, occurred in me, and I felt it as an affliction. So he's not interested in chasing sense pleasures. Just as pain might arise from one feeling pleasure only to afflict him, so too when my perception and attention were accompanied by sensuality, that I felt as an affliction. Then Ananda, it occurred to me, with the subsiding of thought and examination, let me enter into the second jhana. Yet my mind did not launch out upon the absence of thought and become placid, subtle, and liberated in it, though I saw it as peaceful. It occurred to me, why is it that my mind does not launch out upon the absence of thought and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, even though I see that having no thoughts would be peaceful? Then it occurred to me, I have not seen the danger in thoughts, and I have not cultivated that insight, and I have not achieved the benefit in the absence of thought, and have not pursued it. Therefore my mind does not launch out upon the absence of thought, and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, though I see it as peaceful. So he's experienced the first jhana state. The first jhana state is characterized by joy and rapture, and he's very excited. He has this kind of meditative attainment, and it just opens everything up. And he has to think about that. It's a whole new thing, and he's thinking about it, he's examining, and it's sort of like when all of a sudden something new happens in our life, and some major new thing happens, our whole life has changed, and we have to think about all of these implications, like we're living in a new place, or we have a new job, or we have a new relationship, or whatever, or we do some situation where things are completely different, and we have to think about that. And that's what the first job. So it's very pleasant because something really good has happened. It's like, all of a sudden you've just got a lot of money or something. So, but you have to think about, well, what am I going to do with this? How's this going to change my life? And that's the thing here with the first jhana state, is that you realize that you can cut that karmic cycle. You can cut that cycle of grasping and desire, and you don't have to spend your whole life chasing after sense pleasures, going from one to another, just continually filling yourself, just continually grazing like some animal. So he cut that, and he's secluded, he's pulled back, he's achieved the restraint that's the epitome of discipline. And that lets him into the first opening, first realization in the meditation, first opening of enlightenment. And a sense of great joy comes up, and happiness, and a lot of thoughts come up at the same time. So next, that's the first jhana. So he's got to transition from that to the second jhana. So the second jhana state is going to be the rapture and the joy and the happiness, but thoughts fall away. So there's no more thinking about enlightenment or thinking about this new situation. You're familiar with it, and you just rest in it. So this is pretty close to resting in the natural state, in the second jhana, where you let go of attachment to thoughts. Because what is the danger of attachment to thought? Again, it's the same as with sensual pleasure. That we grasp, that we become attached, that we chase after them, that we give them more, we take them more seriously than they're due. All of that, because they're important. And it's that chasing, and that's the whole danger, that thoughts, just like sensual pleasures, can they bind us to karmic paths and keep us from liberation and freedom. So he realizes that, but he hasn't motivated yet. So then, as we go on, then Ananda, it occurred to me, if having seen the danger in thoughts, I would cultivate that insight, and if having achieved the benefit in the absence of thought, I would pursue it, it is then possible that my mind would launch out upon the absence of thought and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, since I see it as peaceful. Then the famous phrase, then sometime later, by the grace of God. Having seen the danger in thoughts, I cultivated that insight, and having achieved the benefit in the absence of thought, I pursued it. My mind did then launch out into the absence of thought, and it did become placid, settled, and liberated in that, since I saw it as peaceful. So, again, when time is right, he enters into the second meditation state where he lets go of thought, and is no longer. And again, letting go of thought is similar to letting go of sense pleasures. It's not that he doesn't have thoughts, that thoughts don't still occur any more than sense pleasures occur. I mean, one still eats, one sleeps. These are all pleasurable things, and one has thoughts too. But what's been lost is the grasping at pleasures, the grasping at physicality, the grasping of mental objects. So physical objects and mental objects are both let go as sources that can somehow satisfy us, that we have to chase after or grasp at. Sometime later, Ananda, with the subsiding of thought and examination, I entered and dwelled in that second jhana. While I was dwelling in this state, perception and attention accompanied by thought occurred in me, and I felt it as an affliction. Just as pain might arise from one feeling pleasure only to inflict it, so when perception and attention accompanied by thought occurred to me, I felt it was affliction. So at some point thoughts become, he's tired of thoughts. They bother him, they're painful, just like chasing after thoughts becomes painful, chasing after pleasure becomes painful, so he lets it go. Then Ananda occurred to me, with the fading away as well as rapture, let me enter and dwell in the third jhana. Yet my mind did not launch out upon the absence of rapture and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, though I saw it as peaceful. It occurred to me, why is it that my mind does not launch out upon the absence of rapture and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, though I see it as peaceful? Then it occurred to me, I have not seen the danger in rapture and have not cultivated that insight. I have not achieved the benefit of the absence of rapture and have not pursued it. Therefore, my mind does not launch out upon the absence of rapture and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, though I see it as peaceful. So having experienced this second jhana, the absence of thoughts, he's still very elated. He's in rapture. He's very happy. And that goes on for a while. And then he realizes that there's a danger in rapture. There's a danger in elation. And that, again, is the same danger. What? Grasping, attachment, being drawn into the karmic cycle. So he's going to let go of this feeling of rapture, because that, too, he's going to become, when I say let go, become indifferent to it. So if he's rapturous, it's fine. If he's not, it's fine. Whatever mood he's in, that's fine. He's not chasing after any kind of mood or feeling or meditation state. So he says, then Ananda, it occurred to me, if having seen the danger in rapture, I would cultivate that insight, and if having achieved the benefit in the absence of rapture, I would pursue it, then it is possible my mind would launch out upon the absence of rapture, become placid, settled, and liberated, since I see it as peaceful. Then sometime later, having seen that danger in rapture, I cultivated that insight, and having achieved the benefit in the absence of rapture, I pursued it. My mind then launched out upon the absence of rapture and became placid, settled, and liberated in it, since I saw it as peaceful. Actually, you should say, became even more placid, settled, and liberated. It seems like his mind is always placid, settled, and liberated, so he should just let it all go. But anyway, in this state is a kind of a progressive peace that's a deeper and deeper peace as he's giving up more possible attachments. Sometime later, Ananda, with the fading away as well of rapture, I entered into and dwelled in that third jhana state. So the third jhana state, the first one had thought investigation, rapture, and happiness. And the second one, they dropped the thought, so it's just rapture and happiness. And the third one, we've now dropped the rapture, so we're just sort of just mildly happy. So sometime later in Nanda, with the fading away as well of rapture, I entered and dwelled in the third jhana. While I was dwelling in this state, perception and tension accompanied by rapture occurred in me, and I felt it as an affliction, just as pain might arise from one feeling pleasure only to afflict him too. So when that perception and tension accompanied by rapture occurred to me, I felt it as an affliction. So he's tired of rapture. Then Ananda occurred to me. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, let me enter and dwell in the fourth jhana. Yet my mind did not launch out upon the absence of pleasure and pain and become placid and settled and liberated in it, although I saw it as peaceful. It occurred to me, why is it that my mind does not launch out upon the absence of pleasure and pain and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, though I see it as peaceful? Then it occurred to me, I have not seen the danger in the pleasure connected with equanimity and have not cultivated that insight. I have not achieved the benefit in the absence of pleasure and pain and have not pursued it. Therefore my mind does not launch out upon the absence of pleasure and pain and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, though I see it as peaceful. Then anon it occurred to me, if having seen the danger in the pleasure connected with equanimity, I would cultivate that insight, and if having achieved the benefit in the absence of pleasure and pain, I would pursue it, it is then possible that my mind would launch out upon the absence of pleasure and pain and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, since I see it as peaceful. Then sometime later, having seen that danger in the pleasure connected with equanimity, I cultivated that insight. Having achieved the benefit in the absence of that, I pursued it. My mind then became peaceful. So, actually, in this version, which is interesting, the third jhana state is the third. All right, the first had thought. The second had, and we gave that up. So the thought. Thought, rapture, and equanimity are his three. So the first jhana has all three of those. The second one, you've given up thought, so there's rapture and equanimity. Rapture's given up. The third one, you're just in this happy state of equanimity. Okay. And then he's going to see that even equanimity, this absence of pleasure or pain, where everything's indifferent, like I said, you're just indifferent to everything, that itself could be, there's a danger there too. And we're getting really subtle now. There's a danger in that you could become attached to being indifferent. You could be attached to your equanimity, to this, nothing phases you, nothing gets you one way or the other. That could be a danger. And so he's going to actually, and this is rather radical, he's going to drop equanimity because that too is a danger. At least the idea of it is a danger. Again, it's always the grasping or the idea that's the problem, not equanimity per se or thoughts or pleasures. So sometime later, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, I entered and dwelled in that fourth jhana. While I was dwelling in this state, perception and attention accompanied by pleasure connected with equanimity occurred in me, and I felt it as an affliction. Just as pain might arise from one feeling pleasure only to afflict him, so too when that pleasure, perception, and attention accompanied by equanimity occurred to me, I felt it as an affliction. Then Ananda occurred to me with the complete surmounting of perception of forms, with the passing away of perceptions of sensory impingement, with non-attention to perception and diversity, perceiving space as infinite. Let me enter and dwell in the base of the infinity of space. Yet my mind did not launch out upon the base of the infinity of space and become placid, settled, and liberated in it, although I saw it as peaceful. It occurred to me, why not? And it occurred to me, I had not yet seen the danger. I'm shortening this a little bit. I had not seen the danger in forms and have not cultivated that insight. I have not achieved the benefit in the base of the infinity of space and have not pursued it. Therefore, my mind does not launch out upon that base of the infinity of space and become placid and peaceful. Then it occurred to me, if having seen that danger in form, I would cultivate that, and if I cultivated that, I would have the benefit of the infinity of space. I could pursue that, and then my mind would become even more peaceful. Then sometime later, having seen that danger, having realized that danger in form, I did cultivate that insight, and I did achieve the benefit of the infinity of space, and my mind then became even more peaceful. So, in the fourth jhana state, although he's now let go of thought, rapture, even equanimity, he's still in the form world. This is going to get really remarkably subtle. He's still in the world of forms. There's objects. He's a body, there are bodies around him, there are forms, there's physical sensation, there's sense perception. So he's seeing that too is a source of attachment and danger. Danger because of the attachment, because of the grasping, just of the idea of form, of physicalness, being something that you could be attached to, and something that you could grasp at. So that, when he realizes that danger and he lets go of that, then he enters in to the formless realm. So the next jhana states are all going to be, the first jhanas are all, you're still in the form realm, in that we're in the, what normally we call the real world. Here, when he gets into the higher jhanas, he's going to actually have it's a meditative experience where his mind is. He's obviously, his body is in this world, but he's going to have the experience of everything being space. I mean, the physical world just drops away and everything is space. So everything is just this space in all directions. And that's the infinity of space, that he's actually transcended the world of form. The world of form, he's now indifferent to that, or let that go, as having any attachment to the realm of form. He's not pro-form or anti-form, he just lets that go. And so, sometime later, with the passing away of that, and he enters in and dwells on the infinity of space. And when he's in the space, then anything that takes him back into the form realm is kind of an affliction from that point of view. So each of these states, everything that came before it, although at one point that was a new realization, it also later becomes a potential for attachment. So he lets that go. So he lets go the idea of form, and he's just dwelling in space, and form seems now an affliction to him. And then, since he continually has these new realizations, it occurs to him, by completely surmounting the base of space, I could perceive that consciousness is infinite. Let me dwell in the infinity of consciousness. And then again, like with all the other ones, he doesn't go into that because he doesn't and become peaceful, but he sees that it's a possibility. And why doesn't he go into it? Because he doesn't see the danger in experience of the infinity of space. And he hasn't cultivated that insight and achieved the benefit of dropping his experience of space and moving on to his experience of infinite of consciousness. And therefore he hasn't followed that. And then it occurs to him that having done that, then everything would work out better. And then finally, sometime later, having seen the danger in just dwelling on space, he then enters this new absorption state, meditative state of the infinity of consciousness. And then his mind becomes even more peaceful. So, space, and again, we're getting very subtle here. So, there's an experience where there's just the experience of infinite space. Again, he doesn't want you to plateau anywhere. There's no resting place. But you experience that everything is space, and then having experienced that, you let that go, and then you go on and see that everything is actually consciousness. In fact, of course, space and consciousness are in some ways the same thing, at least in Dzogchen. But here, they're sort of separate. Consciousness is everything is just consciousness, which is kind of a classic Indian experience. Everything's consciousness. This is that. So he's going to go through again. Sometime later, by completely surmounting the space, consciousness is infinite. I entered and dwelled in consciousness. While I was dwelling in that, then infinity of space, that became an affliction to me. But then it occurs to him, by surmounting the infinity of consciousness, I could perceive there is nothing. Let me enter and dwell in the base of nothingness. So nothingness becomes the next jhana. He's going to, in all the same ways, he sees that, stopping now with this experience that everything is consciousness, that's the final realization. That's an attachment. That's a type of grasping, very subtle. And that, of course, in Buddhist lore, that'll keep you rebirth as a formless God for eons. So he doesn't stay with the experience of everything being consciousness. He actually moves on to the even higher experience, or the even more primordial experience of everything is nothing, emptiness, nothingness. It's not space. It's not form. It's not space. It's not conscious. It's nothing. There's nothingness. So this is an experience of everything, of nothingness, complete nothingness. And after, again, he sees that as a possibility and realizes that would be even more peaceful, and eventually he has that experience as well. And when he has that experience, then even consciousness, everything is consciousness, becomes an affliction to him. So then, dwelling in nothingness, that goes on for some time, and then it occurs to him, by completely surmounting this base of nothingness, let me enter and dwell in neither perception nor non-perception. So that's the next thing beyond nothingness. Nothingness is still a perception. He's having an experience. It's like that part where Padmasambhava gets before Sri Simha, and Sri Simha says, and Padmasambhava is talking about all these great meditation experiences, and Sri Simha says, well, that's really nice, but I haven't ever experienced anything. Can you beat that? And all of a sudden Padmasambhava says, well, no, not really, because everything I've had is just a meditation experience. You're not even having experiences. There's no I left to have an experience for Sri Simha. So that's the non-perception, or no. There's no I left to perceive or not perceive. It's completely gone. So then everything, you are everything, and everything is you. And that's neither and there's no need for perception or non-perception, because you're not looking at anything. There's no one looking at anything. There's nothing to look at. There's no one to look at it. There's no act of looking. It's all. So that is the next one. And then from that point of view, even nothingness becomes a danger and something that he could have become attached to, but he saw beyond that and got beyond that. So then what happens? Let's see here. All right, that's it. You know, this thing has such a long, he has to go through this whole process of, yes, I finally did it, and sometime later, and so forth and so on, and then I had it, and now I've got it, and now I understand neither perception nor non-perception. So his mind launches out, and he has the cessation the cessation of perception and feeling. He drops all of that because the eye is gone, and that is completely peaceful. And then he says, sometime later, Ananda, by completely surmounting this neither perception nor perception, I dwelled in the cessation of perception and feeling, so everything is gone. And having seen with wisdom all traces of karma and defilement are utterly destroyed. So at this point, having gone beyond neither perception nor non-perception, and entering the state actually where the cessation of perception and feeling, there's no feeling, there's no perception, there's no I. Then with that wisdom, this wisdom that is utterly non-dual, where there's just the one Buddha nature in all its glory, that completely empties all his that purifies him completely. Everything is utterly and completely destroyed. There are no more defilements, no more karmic possibilities of a negative sort. And then he adds, and then to conclude this very long sutra, he says, "So long, Ananda, as I did not attain and emerge from these attainments of progressive dwellings in direct order and reverse order, I did not claim to have awakened to the unsurpassed perfect enlightenment in this world with its devas, Mara, and Brahman, in this population with its ascetics and Brahmins and devas and humans. But when I attained and emerged from these 9 attainments of progressive dwellings, the Jhana states, the post-Jhana states, the complete merging of everything. So when he's attained this ability to go up them all to the top and then back down again, he can just move along that whole spectrum of meditative states. Having done that, he now says, I have achieved the perfect enlightenment in this world. And knowledge and vision arose in me with that this is the liberation of my mind, it's unshakable, this is my last birth, now there is no more renewed existence. And that is the end of the sutra. So this is what the Buddha is famous for. He's famous for his ability he's mastered all these very advanced meditation stages, not just the ones in the realm of form, which involve putting the mind to rest, but also all the formless states. And he can move freely between all possible meditative states. And because he can do that, he then proclaims himself as the enlightenment. So, of course, the implication being that if you're going to be a Buddha and you're going to be enlightened, you would have a similar sort of mastery over meditation. So I found that to be the most interesting write-up on the jhanas I've come across. And it is very important in Buddha because in the story of the Buddha, if you go back when he, on his night of enlightenment, he's able to do this. That's the essence of his enlightenment, is he's able to have all these experiences. But then when he has his parinirvana, when he's finally dying, he's going to do the same thing. At the very end of his life, he's going to, he's with his disciples and he's, not in a particular meditative state. He's just there, present with the disciples. Then he's going to go into meditation. He's going to experience all the jhanas all the way up. He's going to come back down again. And then he's going to go up a second time. And this time when he gets to the last one, he's going to push. And that's the end of the Buddha. He's now one with the universe. That's why there's no more rebirth. He doesn't even have a Pure Land. He's, bodhisattvas like, and primordial Buddhas who never had to work very hard, they have Pure Lands. But the Buddha, he's everything at that point, after he does that last little leap off the 9th jhana, if you will. So what do you think?
That was excellent. I love the way you explained that, and I was trying to follow along with, what he has sort of dropped from the previous level there. You started out how he, thought was what he dropped in the second one. He no longer had that, and then but when he gets down to no perception or non-perception, and then he sort of advances past that to cessation. What would you say that he had at the level of no perception or non-perception?
Well, that was a new one to me, and I kind of messed that up a little bit here. So he reaches this the 8th one. So there's 4 of the forms, the 4 classic 4 jhanas. Then we go infinite space, infinite conscious. I'm missing one here. Nothingness. Then neither perception nor non-perception. And then there's a 9th one, which I hadn't heard before. So he says here, after leaving neither perception nor non-perception, let me enter and dwell in the cessation of perception and feeling. And that's all it says. And then
and karma's destroyed.
And he's going to say down there, having seen the danger in neither perception nor non-perception, I cultivated that, and having cultivated that, cessation of perception and feeling. So he enters this new state, or the last one, the 9th one, which is no longer perception nor feeling. And they don't give any more explanation of that. So I just have to assume the only way you can have no perception, you need it in a state where all right, this is very subtle. Neither perception nor non-perception, but there's still somebody who's neither having perception nor non-perception.
Right.
So you got to drop that whatever last trace of self, the self that's experiencing neither perception nor non-perception.
Yeah.
So that's the complete cessation of anything and everything. So the cessation of anything and everything is to become anything and everything, which is what the Buddha does. And that's then opens, so at that point, he can go parinirvana at any time. He knows he can go all the way to this where he merges in with the universe and disappears. And then when the end of his physical life, when the karma for his physical life expires, that's exactly what he does. Thank you for clearing that up.
I have a question about the word perception. Is there like So like when I see the word perception, I think of like a way that the senses or sense organ consciousnesses are structured, because like you perceive what you're I don't know, you're cognitively structured to perceive, so that if you're looking at if you look for something, you're likely to see it. Or if you have a name, like back to the nidanas, like if you have a name and form for things, then you're going to see the things you have name and form for, perceive them. But if you're going to miss you're going to miss phenomena that might be there that you don't have a conceptual framework for seeing. Is that
Well, that all we're in the formless realm, so that type of perception was dropped a long time ago. That's almost dropped at the first jhana.
okay?
And so all your kind of normal misperception, what we call perception is really misperception. You know, we perceive the world, but we actually don't see it. We misperceive it continually. And because we're framing a narrative around it, and we're basically confused and clouded and not totally clear, and overstimulated and so forth and so on. So no, we're not perceiving a whole lot. But the clarity is starting, from the very first jhana, things get very clear. That's why there's a lot of excitement. Things are just definitely clearing up. And so in a sense, even at the level of the first jhana, you're seeing things very clearly. There's no overlay. And particularly once you let go of the thoughts, which you do in the second jhana, then there's no conceptual overlay interfering with your clarity. I mean, that, like I said, the second jhana comes very close to what we normally kind of talk about as the natural state, although obviously these other things, we were quite content just being in the absence of thought and living in the realm of form. Nobody's talking about being, later on in rainbow bodies you work on these other higher ones, but generally the highest, let me put it a different way, the highest working level is the second jhana. After the second jhana, you can't be in the world and doing anything. You could actually be in the world in the second jhana. You might be able to be in the world in the third one. But obviously the formless realms, you're not doing anything. You're meditating somewhere, and you've you're not even seeing this world. You're in you've transcended mentally experience of the physical. So, and you're just having very subtle kinds of mind experiences, like infinity of space, like everything is consciousness. And you're not thinking that, you're actually seeing that, you're experiencing that. Everything is space. And that's amazing. And everything is consciousness, and that's really amazing. And
I
then,
have kind of a.
go ahead.
Well, I have kind of a tricky question. Is it possible that having the Buddha go through this experience and go all the way to the point where he basically completely dissolved in the universe, that he actually profoundly changed the universe? That the reason why everyone has Buddha nature is because of what he did?
Ooh. I like that, actually. I hadn't thought of that before, but that's quite good. Yeah, certainly. No, he's not the first Buddhist, so it has been, but for this eon, and that's something that's a very interesting one, because it's similar, this idea that in Christianity, that when Jesus died on the cross,
He died for everybody's sins and changed everything.
And that was the eon-changing event. But
right,
Buddha's parinirvana for Buddhism is that kind of eon-changing event.
Right, and I was trying to figure what would be the change, and I thought, well, maybe maybe that would be the change, that everyone has access to Buddha nature because it actually got completely dissolved throughout the entire universe.
Right. So Buddha nature is present in everything as a result of him having infused it in that way, made that, brought that together.
Right.
Yeah. No, I love it. That's wonderful.
I think I got off on that.
We're staying with the Buddha. You're all ready the next time you meet an adventure. I didn't even say, yes, I was saved 500 years before you were.
That's funny. Oh, good. Yeah, we like religious competition, don't we?
I'll remember that when that comes up. Yeah.
You answered a question that I've been wondering about in this discourse, Bruce. You answered a question I've been wondering about for, I don't know, about 20 years. It was your phrasing of when people say let go of something, let go of it, let go of it. I just had this conversation 2 days ago with somebody. It's like, what does that mean? and what you said was it's actually becoming indifferent to it. So that if you're let's say you're overwhelmed with a sense of whatever, some strong feeling comes up, but there's a part of you that's just actually not interested. It's just not interested. So it's not like weather doesn't come and go. It's not like you don't have these emotions and narratives and whatever. It's just there's a real core part of you that just isn't interested. And that's actually really helpful. So thanks.
Yeah, well, no, I think this is working through your text, you get new insights. And I think actually your way of saying it, you just lose interest, is even better than indifferent in a way, because that's exactly, you think about it, there are times when, like, you're in middle school and something really matters to you, and you're just going to die if you don't get this thing or whatever it is you want, or something doesn't happen a certain way that you want, or you're going to die, or you're all that. And then a few years later when you're older, you look back on that and there's nothing about that that's interesting to you. It's like these newspaper articles they run, the stuff we did when we were 20. No one's interested. Right. We're not interested in going back there. We're just not that we're indifferent. We're just not. It's not where we are. We're in a new space. We're in a new place, and that struggle is gone. And we didn't let it go as much as we outgrew it. There's a great phrase someone gave to me the other day. It was a guy in his mid-80s, and he says, well, we like to say that we age out of stuff. So, I'm aged out of camping. I'm aged out of, all the things he doesn't do anymore.
Right, uh-huh.
He's not doing them because he can't. He's aged out of them. Which is a very positive way to look at it, really. So here in the Buddha, he's aging out of this stuff. Losing interest in it.
Well, and another way of saying this is just, it doesn't, but be content with where you're at, and don't grieve when it goes away, because as he's going through all these different places, and each place has their point where I'm like, wow, this is a really cool place. And then it's like, yeah, but don't cling to it. Let it come, let it go. You just let it come and let it go.
So it's remarkable that all through all of these 9 states, and through the whole Buddhist teachings, it's all, let it come, let it go, which is the whole practice of meditation, right? Thoughts come up, they come, they go. become
Right.
go.
Yeah, and you know, you're wanting to have a state of peacefulness, but you get to that state of peacefulness, and then you realize this isn't as peaceful as I thought it was. I want more peacefulness.
Well, everything that looks like, a lot of things look like freedom compared to what came before, but then they become a trap if you hold on to it, you know.
Right.
And you can imagine, I mean, of course, this is India too, where, I mean, India, if India is about nothing other than like getting high and staying high, I mean, so this is very radical. I mean, he's saying, if you get high, that's fine, but let it go, you know. Don't, and there's no clinging, no grasping to these like great states of being. It's not about getting high. You know, it's actually about becoming completely free.
Yes, there's coming and going, and then beyond that, there's no coming and no going. It's like the Zen.
Well, once the perceiver disappears, then how can it be coming or going?
Bruce, can you say something about the importance of like going up and down? I mean, it feels like you can see why Buddhism could get the criticism of nihilism, that the end goal is this, you know, beyond nothingness thing. But he's saying that awakening is like an awakened life, that you have this ability to go up and down, and, or whatever, in and out of all these deeper and subtler states.
Well, this is an interesting question because, yeah, the Buddha's dissolving of the self is the ultimate Buddhist vision at that level we just talked about, where even perception and feeling disappear because there's no longer a perceiver or feeler. And ordinary person is not going to appreciate this idea at all. And so, yeah, from that point of view, Buddhism, that's not what they want. And that's always going to happen, because that's why they're not doing this path, because they're attached to something. They're attached to sensual pleasures. They're attached to a form world. They're attached, you know, to a heaven. So yeah, for the Christian idea, what you want is, and I just went to a funeral service yesterday because 3 of my friends died last week. I went to one of them, and we're all going to meet again in heaven, and you know everything will be hunky dory. But that's not, the Buddha's not saying that. No one's, you know, there's no meeting in heaven with your relatives in this worldview. I'm afraid to say it's that he's just he's dissolving into the universe. The universe and the Buddha are one, and there is no further rebirth of any kind for the Buddha. Now, of course, we're not quite there yet, so we might have a few heavens left in us. We may have to work through that. Maybe if we've never been to heaven, maybe we still have some heaven we have to go through just as one, you know, some progressive state. But think about it. I mean, I love the Christian idea. You know, we'll get in heaven. I'm going to meet my family. I'm going to, you know, everything's going to be wonderful. We're going to wander in paradise, and the lions are going to lay down with the lambs, and we'll all be together again. Philosophically, that has so many problems. I mean, imaginatively, I mean, what age are we going to be? I'm going to be 16, and my grandma's going to be 16, and then we're going to hit on my grandmother. I mean, you start playing that out. it doesn't
Not
make
to
any
mention,
sense.
which family are you going to meet?
Yeah, I mean, the families have been going on forever and ever. I mean, it could be crazy, you know,
Yeah.
and how much, and a lot of these people, we didn't spend much time with them while they were here for good reason, maybe, and why would we want to spend time with them? And, you know, it does not make any sense. It's, you know, but it's very comforting when you're in a situation of loss to feel like you haven't really lost that person. Of course, you really haven't lost that person because, I don't know, here in Albion at least, the dead are really quite alive. I think, you know, people think about them all the time, and it seems like they're kind of intermingled with us all. But, yeah, so, yeah, people will say that, you know, that Buddhism is nihilistic because we dissolve the self. So we don't have these, you know, kind of heaven, you know, what's the self good for? And they'll say, well, if there's no self, then I can't have fun in heaven. But, you know, after a while, that's going to get old too. And then what next? I mean, how many times have we been in heaven and fallen out of heaven? I mean, heaven, remember, is just another part of the circle, as far as Buddhism is concerned. So Buddha is going to get you out of the whole thing. But you can't really, again, very few people are prepared for that.
So, just to compare it, like comparing this view, like to say like materialism, where you have, it's like you're dead and you're gone. But in Buddhism, this is not. I don't think this is accurate, but it could sound accurate. Some of it might be that you're reborn, then you're enlightened, and then you're gone. But the you're gone part is it's not the same as the scientific materialist, like dead and gone, just completely absent, gone, oblivion. Or is, I mean, the Buddha's not obliterated so much as he's.
Well, I was thinking about that because we had a discussion earlier in the philosophy group that I meet with weekly, that these two professors, and one of them at some point mentioned that we were talking about he said he was a materialist, and generally materialist views is, you know, of course at the end that's it, and we dissolve into the elements. And that's when I started thinking that, well, that is it. That's good though. You know, everyone says this like there's some kind of they're sad about that. You know what I mean? Like, well, we're just going to dissolve into the elements. Like, I'm willing to accept that. Well, of course you're willing to accept it. It's great. That's exactly what the Buddha did. He dissolved into the elements. That's what you want to do, and it's going to happen. Yes, you are going to dissolve into the elements, and the difference is that you're going to be awake, not asleep. The dissolving part is right, but it's, you know, there's going to be that awareness, and that's the difference. Is that the Buddha is still is more alive. Is completely alive. Is more alive. Is everything, and how he's all life. And he's that force that moves through all life. So essentially, he's God. I mean, but there's no God because there's no Buddha. There's nothing. I mean, it's just that. And
So for thatness.
But the Buddha also, I mean, that's my understanding of it, shall we say. The Shakyamuni Buddha was always very non-committal when asked questions as to the status of the Buddha after death. You know, he doesn't answer those kind of questions. He doesn't pursue that line of inquiry. He just says, well, that can't be answered. So that's really the best. I mean, to say that you dissolve into everything, although that seems to be suggested here, to my understanding, what actually happens is beyond any kind of description or imagination. So,
Ineffable.
it is essentially ineffable. But see, it doesn't matter again because anything again, if you when you talk about these things, then you might be creating some sort of desire to have these advanced states. But since we're in a natural path, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, and so forth. But actually, and the Buddha kind of hints at that, right? He's just being, he's just going along, and then sometime later, then sometime. Well, how long was that later? Maybe that was a lifetime. Maybe that was an eon. He doesn't say. Sometime later. So the point isn't really to develop some sort of expectation for the greater and greater states, but just to really reinforce that at the subtlest of subtle levels, the letting go principle applies. So if it applies to that level, it certainly works in everyday life quite well too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've run past a bit here.
Thank you, Bruce. That was great.
And that's fun, something new. There's lots of, in these 5 volumes of sutras, there are sutras that nobody's ever studied. In 2,000 years, I'm quite sure of it. I mean, this might be one of those. There are thousands and thousands of sutras. Nobody, no one may have taught this. No students may have discussed this. We may be the first people to actually kind of, read this through and wrestle with it. Yeah. So that's a very exciting treasury here because you can find it. And there's other ones. I'll bring out some other ones as we go along. But that's why I've been really enjoying getting into all these texts because here they are in English and no one's really gone and looked at this stuff really carefully. And there's some amazing stuff in there, like what we just read through.
Yeah, when you interpret it for us.
For those with eyes to see and ears to hear. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy on day. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all my griefs. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, Trish. Bye, Don.
Thank
Bye, Bruce.
Bye.